The parking lot emptied like a deflating balloon. Car after car pulled away, loaded with sunburned kids clutching friendship bracelets and camp photos. I sat on my duffel bag, watching the dust settle on the gravel, my phone buzzing with the same automated message. Your ride is on the way. Again, just like last summer. Just like the summer before that. My parents had forgotten me at Camp Wildwood pickup, leaving me stranded while they rushed off to my brother Jake's baseball tournament or my sister Emma's dance recital. But this time felt different. This time, I remembered dying in my first life. The memories crashed over me like cold lake water. Sitting in this exact spot at 17, watching the last counselor lock up, spending the night alone in the empty dining hall, walking home the next morning, 15 miles on empty country roads, finding my family had left for their Cabo vacation without me. The slow, crushing realization that I simply didn't matter. This was my second chance. Still waiting? A warm voice broke through my spiral. I looked up to see Ethan Blackwood, the camp owner's son. Tall, sun-bleached hair, wearing a staff polo that showed off his lifeguard tan. In my first life, he'd driven past me on that lonely walk home, never slowing down. Now he was crouching beside me, concern creasing his forehead. "They're coming," I lied, just like I had before. "No, they're not," he said gently. "Your parents left 2 hours ago. I saw them loading Jake's gear into their Range Rover." My stomach dropped. Even in this life, even knowing what was coming, the abandonment still cut like broken glass. But this time, I wouldn't walk home. This time, I had a plan. "Could you give me a ride?" I asked, meeting his eyes. "I'll pay for gas." Ethan's truck smelled like pine air freshener and swimming pool chlorine. I clutched my duffel bag on my lap, fingers trembling as I typed my parents a careful message. "Got a ride with a friend. See you at home." Just like last time, they wouldn't even respond until tomorrow. "You're Maya Chen, right?" Ethan glanced at me while we waited at a red light. "Jake's little sister?" "That's me," I said, swallowing the bitter taste of being defined by my brother. "The forgotten one." He frowned. "I doubt that. If only he knew. In my first life, I'd been the family ghost. Good grades, perfect behavior, never causing trouble, and completely invisible because of it. Jake was the golden boy athlete, Emma the talented performer, and I was just there, existing in the spaces between their achievements. "Where should I drop you?" Ethan asked as we turned onto my street. I stared at the sprawling colonial house where I'd grown up, feeling like a stranger. The circular driveway sat empty. No cars, no signs of life. They really had left without me. "Actually," I said, pulse quickening, "could we make a stop first?" 30 minutes later, we pulled into the parking lot of Riverside Savings Bank. I'd had all summer to think about this moment, to plan my escape. The money was the key, my college fund that Dad controlled, my grandmother's inheritance that Mom managed for my own good. Money I'd never touched in my first life because I'd been too grateful, too compliant. "This'll just take a minute," I told Ethan, sliding out of the truck. Inside the bank, I approached the customer service desk with steady steps. The woman behind the counter looked up with a practiced smile that faltered when she saw my age. "I need to withdraw funds from my accounts," I said, sliding my ID across the marble surface. "All of them." 20 minutes later, I walked back to Ethan's truck carrying a cashier's check for $47,000. My grandmother's inheritance, my college fund, and the settlement money from a car accident when I was 12, all of it sitting in accounts my parents had managed while taking out loans in my name for Jake's private coaching and Emma's elite dance camps. "Everything okay?" Ethan asked as I buckled my seatbelt. "Perfect," I said, tucking the check into my bag. "Now I need to make one more stop." The law office of Hartwell and Associates sat in a gleaming downtown tower. I'd researched them obsessively over the past year, knowing exactly what I needed when this moment came. Ethan waited in the truck while I took the elevator to the 32nd floor. "Miss Chen?" Mr. Hartwell greeted me in his mahogany-paneled office. "I received your email. Quite an unusual request for someone your age." "I'm legally able to make these decisions," I said, setting down a folder thick with documents. "And I have the funds to pay your retainer." His eyes widened as I slid the cashier's check across his desk. You want to buy your family's mortgage? They're 3 payments behind, I said, facts rolling off my tongue like memorized lines. I've verified it with the bank. If I purchase the debt, I become the lender. They'll owe me instead of Riverside Mortgage. Mr. Hartwell leaned back in his leather chair. That's legally sound, but ethically questionable. This is your family we're discussing. My family that left me stranded at camp, I said, ice creeping into my voice. My family that forgot my birthday last year. My family that spent my inheritance on my siblings' activities without asking. I met his gaze steadily. I want them to understand what it feels like to depend on someone else's mercy. 2 hours later, I had signed papers that made me the primary lien holder on our family home. The house where I'd been invisible, where I'd watched from the sidelines while Jake and Emma soaked up every drop of attention, now it belonged to me. Ethan was leaning against his truck when I emerged, scrolling through his phone. He looked up as I approached, eyebrows raised at my expression. You look different, he said. Lighter somehow. I feel different, I admitted, surprising myself with the honesty. Like I'm finally awake. Good for you. He opened the passenger door. Ready to go home? I hesitated, looking back at the gleaming tower where I'd just restructured my entire life. Actually, could you take me somewhere else? I'm not ready to face them yet. Where? Surprise me. We ended up at Lookout Point, the scenic overlook where camp kids often went for sunset photos. Ethan parked facing the valley, and we sat on his tailgate sharing gas station snacks while the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. So, he said, opening a bag of chips, want to tell me what just happened back there? I considered lying, spinning some story about birthday money or a part-time job. But something about Ethan's quiet presence made me want to tell the truth. I bought my parents' mortgage, I said simply. He choked on his soda. You what? They're behind on payments. I had inheritance money sitting in accounts they controlled, so I took it back and bought their debt. I shrugged, trying to look casual. Now they owe me instead of the bank. Ethan stared at me for a long moment. That's brilliant and terrifying. They left me, I said, old hurt bleeding through my voice. Not just today. They've been leaving me my whole life. Choosing Jake's games, Emma's recitals, anything that felt more important than their middle daughter. So you decided to leave first? I decided to level the playing field. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. How was the last day of camp? See you tomorrow. The casual tone made my jaw clench. Tomorrow, like I was just another item on her weekend to-do list. Want to know a secret? I said, not taking my eyes off the message. Always. This isn't the first time they've forgotten me here. In another life, I walked home. 15 miles. By the time I got there, they'd left for vacation. I turned to face him. But somehow, I remember it all happening before. Like I've lived this day already. Ethan was quiet for a moment, studying my face in the fading light. Deja vu can feel pretty intense sometimes. This isn't deja vu, I said. This is a second chance. My phone rang. Mom's contact photo filled the screen. A family portrait from last Christmas where Jake and Emma flanked my parents while I stood slightly apart, forgotten even by the photographer's eye. Hi, Mom, I answered, voice carefully neutral. Maya, how was camp? We're just getting home from Jake's tournament. He made varsity. Of course he did. That's great, I said. Camp was fine. Good, good. Listen, honey, we're exhausted. Could you get a ride home with someone? We'll catch up tomorrow. The casual dismissal hit exactly like I'd expected, but it still stung. In my first life, I'd said yes immediately, grateful for any scrap of attention. Not this time. Actually, Mom, I need to talk to you about something important. Oh, what's that, sweetheart? I bought the house. Silence stretched across the line like a taut wire. In the background, I could hear Dad asking what was wrong, Emma complaining about being tired. What do you mean, bought the house? Mom's voice had gone tight. I mean, I purchased your mortgage from Riverside Bank this afternoon. You were 3 payments behind. Now, instead of owing them $340,000, you owe me. I kept my tone conversational, like I was discussing the weather. The papers were filed an hour ago. The explosion was immediate. Maya Chen, what have you done? You can't just. That's not how. She took a shaky breath. Where did you get that kind of money? Grandma's inheritance, my college fund, the settlement from the accident. Each item landed like a small bomb. Money that was mine anyway, sitting in accounts you controlled. That money was being managed for your future. No, I said, watching Ethan's eyes widen as he listened to my side of the conversation. That money was being used to fund Jake's private coaching and Emma's dance competitions while you told me we couldn't afford college application fees. Dad's voice joined the chaos in the background, demanding to know what was happening. I heard Jake ask if dinner was ready, oblivious to the family meltdown occurring around him. You come home right now, young lady, Mom said, her voice shaking with rage. We're going to fix this. I'll be home when I'm ready, I said. And Mom, the first payment is due in 30 days. I'll be expecting it on time. I hung up before she could respond. Ethan was staring at me with a mixture of awe and concern. Did you really just tell your mother she has to make house payments to you? I really just told my mother she has to make house payments to me, I confirmed. He shook his head, laughing despite himself. That's either the most badass thing I've ever witnessed or the most insane. Why can't it be both? My phone immediately started buzzing with calls from Mom, Dad, and a number I didn't recognize. I turned it to silent and slipped it into my bag. They're going to lose their minds, I said, but for the first time in either lifetime, the thought didn't fill me with guilt. Probably, Ethan agreed. What's your endgame here? I considered the question, watching the last light fade from the sky. I want them to see me, really see me. Not as Jake's sister or Emma's shadow, but as Maya, as someone who matters. And if they don't, then they lose their house to someone who does. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. You know, he said finally, most people spend their whole lives wishing they could start over. Sounds like you actually did it. Something like that. When I finally asked Ethan to take me home, it was past 9 o'clock. The house blazed with lights, every window glowing like angry eyes. 3 cars sat in the driveway, my parents' Range Rover, Emma's hand-me-down Honda, and a black BMW I didn't recognize. Looks like you've got company, Ethan said as we pulled up. Family meeting, I said grimly. Probably called in Uncle Richard. He was Dad's older brother, a real estate lawyer who'd always treated me like an afterthought at family gatherings. Want me to wait? Ethan asked, in case you need a quick escape? I considered it, then shook my head. Thanks, but I need to face this. I've been running from confrontation my whole life. Both your lives, he said with a small smile. Both my lives, I agreed. I grabbed my duffel bag and headed toward the front door. Before I could reach for my key, it swung open. Mom stood silhouetted in the doorway, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. Inside, now! The living room looked like a war council. Dad sat rigid in his leather armchair, his face red with anger. Emma perched on the couch, still in her dance clothes, looking confused and slightly afraid. Jake sprawled in the corner, earbuds in, pointedly ignoring the drama. Uncle Richard stood by the fireplace in his expensive suit, briefcase open on the coffee table. Sit down, Dad barked, pointing to the ottoman in the center of the room. I remained standing. I'm fine here. Maya, Mom's voice was dangerously quiet. What you did today was illegal. You forged documents, impersonated. I forged nothing, I interrupted. I withdrew money from accounts in my name, using proper identification and legal documentation. Uncle Richard can verify that. All eyes turned to the lawyer, who shifted uncomfortably. The transaction appears to be technically legitimate, he admitted reluctantly. The funds were legally accessible to her as the beneficiary. She's 17, Dad exploded. She can't make financial decisions of this magnitude. Actually, I said, pulling a document from my bag. I can. I filed for emancipated minor status 6 months ago. It was approved last week. I'd forged the paperwork in my first life but never submitted it, too afraid of the consequences. This time, I'd done it properly, through the proper channels. Uncle Richard's face went pale as he scanned the document. This is valid. She has legal autonomy over her finances." The room erupted. Mom started crying. Dad began pacing. Emma asked what emancipated meant. Jake finally pulled out his earbuds to demand someone explain what was happening. "You want to know what's happening?" I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. "I'll tell you exactly what's happening." I moved to the center of the room, claiming the space I'd never been allowed to occupy. "For 17 years, I've been invisible in this family. You forgot my birthday 3 times. You missed every single one of my academic awards ceremonies. You left me stranded at camp pickup 4 years running. You spent my inheritance on Jake's training and Emma's competitions without asking. We invested in their futures," Mom started. "You invested in their dreams while ignoring mine." I cut her off. "When I wanted piano lessons, you said we couldn't afford them. When Jake wanted private coaching, you found the money. When I needed a tutor for calculus, you said I should figure it out myself. When Emma wanted to go to dance intensive, you paid her way." Each accusation hit like a physical blow. I saw recognition dawning in their faces, the slow realization of their patterns of neglect. "You treated me like a convenience," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "Something you could ignore until you needed it. Well, congratulations. You created a daughter who learned to be self-sufficient, who learned to solve her own problems, who learned that the only person she could count on was herself." "Maya," Dad's voice was quieter now, almost pleading. You never meant to show me I didn't matter?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You never meant to forget me at camp? You never meant to leave me out of family photos? You never meant to plan a vacation for 4 people in a family of 5? Emma spoke up for the first time. "What vacation for 4 people?" I turned to her, seeing genuine confusion in her eyes. "Cabo, Christmas of my junior year, you, Jake, Mom, and Dad. I found the reservation confirmation in Dad's email. 4 plane tickets, 4 hotel rooms." The silence was deafening. Emma looked stricken. Jake had gone completely still. Even Uncle Richard appeared uncomfortable. "We thought," Mom whispered, then stopped. "You thought what?" "We thought you'd want to stay home. You always seemed to prefer being alone." The words hit like a slap. I seemed to prefer being alone because you never included me in anything else. I made myself small because every time I tried to take up space, I got pushed aside for Jake's games or Emma's performances. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a photo album I'd created months ago. Screenshots of family social media posts, pictures from events I'd been cropped out of or excluded from entirely. Here's Jake's championship game last year. Whole family in matching jerseys, except me. Here's Emma's recital, you, Mom, and Dad in the front row with flowers. I was in the back with the grandparents because you forgot to save me a seat. I swiped through image after image. Here's the family ski trip I didn't know about until I saw the photos on Facebook. Here's the graduation party for Emma that I found out about when the neighbors asked why I wasn't there. Each image was a small wound, a moment of exclusion I'd carried silently. But stringing them together like this created an undeniable pattern of neglect. Mom was openly sobbing now. Dad had his head in his hands. Emma looked like she was about to be sick. "I didn't know," Emma whispered. "I swear, Maya, I didn't know." "How could you not know?" I demanded. "You were there for all of it." I thought you chose not to come. You never seemed upset about missing things." "Because I learned not to show it." The words came out as a shout, 17 years of suppressed pain finally erupting. I learned that expressing disappointment just made everyone uncomfortable. I learned that being grateful for scraps was easier than fighting for a seat at the table. The room fell silent except for Mom's quiet crying. Uncle Richard quietly packed up his briefcase, clearly wanting to escape the family implosion. "So what now?" Dad asked finally. "What do you want from us?" I looked around the room at these people who'd shaped my life while barely acknowledging my existence. In my first timeline, I died still hoping they'd notice me, still believing that if I was just good enough, quiet enough, perfect enough, I might earn their attention. "I want you to understand what it feels like to have your security depend on someone else's whims," I said. "I want you to experience the uncertainty of not knowing if someone will be there when you need them." "You're really going to foreclose on us?" Jake spoke for the first time. his voice small. I'm going to hold you accountable, I corrected. If you make your payments on time, if you treat me like an equal member of this family, if you show me the same consideration you show each other, then we won't have a problem. And if we don't, Dad's voice was hoarse, then you'll discover what I already know. That home isn't about the building you live in. It's about feeling like you belong somewhere. I picked up my duffel bag. I'm staying at the Marriott downtown tonight. You have 30 days to make your first payment. I suggest you use that time to think about what kind of family you want to be. I turned to leave, but Emma's voice stopped me. Maya, wait. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Tears streamed down her face. I never realized. I thought you liked being independent. I learned to like being independent because I didn't have a choice, I said softly. But independence and abandonment aren't the same thing. I walked out of the house where I'd grown up invisible and climbed into the rideshare I'd called while they were arguing. As we pulled away, I saw them through the living room window. Mom curled up on the couch, Dad staring at the wall, Emma and Jake huddled together, talking quietly. For the first time in either lifetime, they were talking about me. The Marriott suite felt like a palace compared to my cramped bedroom at home. King-sized bed, marble bathroom, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I ordered room service and ate in blessed silence while scrolling through missed calls and increasingly frantic text messages. Mom, please come home. We need to talk. Dad, this has gone too far. We can fix this. Emma, I found the Christmas photos. I can't believe we left you out. Jake, Mom's been crying for 3 hours. What did you say to her? I set the phone aside without responding and ran a hot bath. As I sank into the lavender-scented water, I let myself feel the weight of what I'd done. In one day, I'd restructured my entire family dynamic, claimed my financial independence, and forced them to confront their patterns of neglect. In my first life, I died waiting for them to see me. This time, I'd made myself impossible to ignore. My phone rang around midnight. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. Hey, I answered, surprised by how glad I was to hear from him. Hey yourself, how did the family meeting go? About as well as expected. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. Want some company? I promise I'm not a serial killer. I laughed despite everything. How do I know you're not just really good at hiding the bodies? You don't. That's what makes it exciting. Room 1247. But just to talk, I've had enough drama for one day. 20 minutes later, Ethan appeared at my door with 2 cups of coffee and a bag of donuts from the 24-hour shop downstairs. Comfort food, he said, settling into the armchair while I curled up on the bed. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how nuclear was the fallout? 15, I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. My mom cried, my dad threatened legal action, my uncle confirmed everything I did was legal, and my siblings finally realized they've been participating in my erasure for years. Heavy stuff. The heaviest. I bit into a glazed donut, savoring the sugar rush. Can I ask you something? Shoot. Why did you help me today? You barely know me. Ethan was quiet for a moment, turning his coffee cup in his hands. My parents got divorced when I was 14. My mom moved to California, and I stayed with my dad to help run the camp. For 3 years, she sent birthday cards but never called. Christmas presents but no visits. I felt invisible to her, like I was just an obligation she checked off her list. What changed? I stopped waiting for her to see me and started building a life where I felt visible. Made friends who valued me, threw myself into camp activities, figured out who I was when I wasn't trying to earn her attention. He looked up at me. When I saw you sitting there today, forgotten again, I recognized the look on your face, like you were disappearing from the inside out. I admitted. In my first life, I disappeared completely. Your first life? I told him then about the memories that felt too real to be imagination. About dying at 35, alone in a studio apartment, surrounded by achievements no one in my family had ever acknowledged. About waking up at 17 with a chance to rewrite the story. That's either the most elaborate fantasy I've ever heard, he said when I finished, or you're telling me you literally came back from the dead. Does it matter which one it is? Not really, he said after thinking about it. Either way, you're someone who decided to stop accepting less than you deserve. That's pretty badass. We talked until dawn about family dynamics and second chances and the difference between being alone and being lonely. When he finally left, promising to check on me later, I felt something I hadn't experienced in either lifetime, the solid foundation of genuine friendship. My phone had accumulated 37 missed calls overnight. I scrolled through them while eating room service breakfast. Mom, Dad, Emma, Jake, Uncle Richard, even my grandmother from Florida who'd somehow heard about the family crisis. I called Grandma first. Maya, sweetheart? Her voice was warm but concerned. Richard called me last night. He said you've done something dramatic with your inheritance money. I bought Mom and Dad's mortgage, I said simply. A long pause, then unexpectedly laughter. Oh, honey, you are your grandmother's granddaughter. What do you mean? I did something similar when I was about your age. My parents kept treating me like a child while expecting me to shoulder adult responsibilities. So, I bought the family business out from under them and made them my employees. I nearly choked on my orange juice. You what? Different times. Same principle. Sometimes you have to flip the power dynamic to get people's attention. Her voice grew serious. But Maya, be careful. Money can change relationships in ways you can't predict. They already changed it by ignoring me for 17 years, I said. At least now I have some control over the outcome. Fair enough. Just don't let revenge become your whole identity. It's a tool, not a lifestyle. After we hung up, I felt oddly validated. Grandma had always been the family rebel, the one who'd built her own real estate empire from nothing. Knowing she'd faced similar family dynamics gave me strength. My second call was to Mr. Hartwell. Miss Chen, he answered immediately. I've been expecting your call. Your parents' attorney contacted me this morning. Let me guess. They want to overturn the sale. They want to explore their options. I informed them that all paperwork was filed correctly and that you have legal standing to hold the mortgage. He paused. However, I should warn you that they're considering challenging your emancipated minor status. My stomach clenched. On what grounds? Emotional instability. They claim your recent actions demonstrate impaired judgment. And what do you think? I think they're grasping at straws. Your actions were methodical, well-planned, and legally sound. That doesn't suggest instability. It suggests someone who's been pushed too far. I spent the rest of the morning working with Mr. Hartwell to bulletproof my legal position. By noon, I had documented evidence of my parents' financial mismanagement, their history of excluding me from family decisions, and their pattern of prioritizing my siblings over me. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Maya, this is Ethan. Want to grab lunch? I know a place that makes killer grilled cheese. I smiled, realizing I was hungry for the first time in days. Yes, I could use some normal. The diner Ethan chose was the kind of place with red vinyl booths and waitresses who called everyone hun. We slid into a corner booth, and I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. So, Ethan said after we ordered, what's the plan now? You've got your family's attention. How do you want to use it? Honestly, I'm not sure. I traced patterns on the table with my finger. In my first life, I spent so much energy trying to earn their love that I never figured out what I actually wanted. And now I want to matter. I want my voice to carry weight in family decisions. I want them to consider my feelings before making plans. I looked up at him. Is that too much to ask? Not even close. Our food arrived and we ate in comfortable silence. Around us, families laughed and argued and shared meals, normal interactions I'd watched from the sidelines my entire life. Can I ask you something? I said, dipping my grilled cheese in tomato soup. Always. Do you think I'm being too harsh? Everyone keeps telling me this is extreme. Ethan considered the question while chewing. Here's what I think, he said finally. Your family ignored you for 17 years. They forgot you at camp 4 times. They spent your inheritance without asking and planned vacations without including you. But somehow, buying their mortgage to get their attention is extreme? When you put it like that, the only thing extreme here is how long you put up with being treated like you were optional. My phone rang. Mom's picture filled the screen. I should probably take this, I said. Maya. Mom's voice was raw, like she'd been crying all night. Please come home. We need to talk as a family. I'm listening. Not over the phone. This is too important for phone calls. I looked at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly. I'll be there in an hour. The family meeting was very different from the night before. No lawyers, no accusations, no one trying to take control. Mom and Dad sat together on the couch, Emma curled up in the armchair, Jake on the floor with his back against the wall. They all looked exhausted. We've been talking all night, Mom said as I settled onto the ottoman. About you, about us, about the kind of family we've been. And Dad cleared his throat. We owe you an apology, a real one. Not just for yesterday, but for years of making you feel invisible. We found the photo albums, Emma added quietly. All the pictures you're missing from. All the events you weren't invited to. We never realized. How? I asked. How did you not realize? Because we didn't want to, Jake said simply. You made it easy for us to ignore you. You never complained, never made demands, never caused drama. So we just didn't see. The honesty was brutal and refreshing. What do you want from us? Mom asked. How do we fix this? I'd been thinking about this question all morning. I want to be included in family decisions. I want my opinion to matter. I want you to check with me before making plans that affect me. I want you to celebrate my achievements the same way you celebrate Jake's and Emma's. Done, Dad said immediately. I'm not finished. I took a deep breath. I want you to pay back the money you spent from my inheritance, with interest. I want a written family agreement that outlines how financial decisions will be made going forward, and I want you to go to family therapy with me. Therapy? Mom looked alarmed. We need to learn how to be a family that includes everyone. That doesn't happen overnight. They exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them. Okay, Dad said finally. All of it. Whatever you need. And the mortgage? We'll make the payments, he said. On time every month. And when we've paid it off, we'd like you to transfer it back to us. When you've proven you can see me as an equal member of this family, I corrected. The mortgage is just insurance. Fair enough. We talked for 2 more hours, laying out ground rules and expectations. It felt like the first real conversation I'd ever had with my parents. Not Maya the shadow or Maya the forgotten daughter, but Maya the person with thoughts and feelings and legitimate grievances. When I finally left, it was with a cautious hope that things might actually change. Over the next month, they proved they were serious about change. Dad came to my academic awards ceremony and cheered louder than anyone. Mom included me in planning Emma's Sweet 16 party. Jake invited me to his games and actually introduced me to his teammates as his sister, not just Jake's little sister. The family therapy sessions were awkward at first, but gradually we learned to communicate without anyone disappearing into the background. Dr. Martinez helped them understand how parentification and emotional neglect had shaped me, while helping me articulate my needs without resorting to financial manipulation. Most importantly, they started seeing me. Really seeing me. The first mortgage payment arrived on time, along with a handwritten note from Dad. Thank you for not letting us lose you completely. But the biggest change came from an unexpected source. I want to transfer to your school, Emma announced one evening at dinner. What? Mom looked shocked. But the Performing Arts Academy is full of people just like how we used to be, Emma interrupted, focused on individual achievement, competition, tearing each other down to get ahead. I want to be somewhere that values different kinds of success. She looked at me across the table. I want to be somewhere my sister goes. It was the first time in either lifetime that someone had changed their plans to include me instead of expecting me to rearrange my life around theirs. 6 months later, I stood in the backyard of our house now, in every sense, watching Jake practice pitches while Emma and I planned her new school schedule. Mom was grilling burgers, Dad was arguing with Uncle Richard about property taxes, and Ethan was lying in a hammock reading a book about sustainable camping practices. My phone buzzed with a notification from the bank. Mortgage payment received. Thank you for your business. I smiled and deleted the message. The payment had come 3 days early this month, along with an extra principal payment and a family photo where I stood front and center, surrounded by people who finally knew how to see me. Maya, Mom called from the grill. How do you want your burger? Surprise me, I called back, settling into a lawn chair next to Ethan. Any regrets? He asked, not looking up from his book. I considered the question, watching my family move around each other with the easy affection I'd always craved. In my first life, I died alone, forgotten, convinced I was fundamentally unworthy of love. This time, I'd fought for my place at the table and won. Just won, I said. What's that? I wish I'd done it sooner. Ethan laughed and reached over to squeeze my hand. Good thing you get a second chance. I squeezed back, thinking about camp pickup and forgotten birthdays and all the ways people could disappear from their own lives. In my first lifetime, I'd waited for them to find me. This time, I'd made myself impossible to lose. Yeah, I agreed, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of possibility. Good thing. The best part wasn't the house or the money or even the apologies. The best part was the morning Jake knocked on my door to ask if I wanted to come to breakfast. The evening Emma curled up next to me to watch a movie. The way Dad now asked for my opinion on family decisions. The way Mom saved me a seat without being asked. I'd spent one lifetime trying to earn their attention and another lifetime demanding it. But in the end, what mattered wasn't how I got their love. It was that I finally knew I deserved it. 3 years later, when I graduated valedictorian, my entire family sat in the front row cheering. When Ethan proposed during my college graduation speech, they were the first ones on their feet applauding. When we bought our first house together, my parents helped with the down payment, not as debt forgiveness, but as a wedding gift freely given. The mortgage on my childhood home was paid off 2 years ahead of schedule. When I transferred it back to my parents, Dad cried. You could have kept it, he said. You earned it. I didn't want the house, I told him. I wanted the family, and now I have both. Sometimes I still think about that girl sitting alone in the camp parking lot, watching car after car drive away. She thought she was worthless, forgettable, doomed to live in the shadows forever. She had no idea she was about to become the architect of her own rescue. Some people wait their whole lives for someone to choose them. I learned to choose myself, and in doing so, I taught them how to choose me too. The camp where it all started still runs every summer. Ethan and I work there together now, watching for the kids who sit a little apart, who don't get picked up on time, who fade into the background. We make sure they know they're seen, because everyone deserves a second chance, and sometimes you have to create it yourself.